Okay, question 4. Same question as number 3. So find the smallest value, but this time there's some logic to the file. This is a sequential file. So the numbers are in order. Now we're not told what order, so they could be in ascending order, which would mean the smallest value is at the front, or they could be in descending order, which means the smallest value is at the very end. Okay, which we can't do much about. We'd have to hunt along and find that. So the logic, if we look at the pseudocode first, we're going to assume that there's at least 2 items in this file. Again, we could assume there are no items or 1 item, but that would make the algorithm more complex, and I'm not interested in super complexity. I'm just interested in a sensible logic that's being followed. Right, so if we read 2 numbers in, and we call those num1 and num2, okay, we can then compare them. If the second number is less than the first number, which is what we're doing with this if, so we've got this little condition, we're saying if that is true, so the second number is less, okay, so maybe the first number was 10 and the next number is 5, that would mean that these numbers are in descending order. If that is the case, then what we've got to do is use a loop to keep reading numbers until we get to the very end and then stop, and that will be our smallest number. Okay, so essentially this if is detecting that we have got a sequential file in descending order. So we say, right, okay, we've got to read to the end. If when we've done that first test that's not true, that's false, we don't want to do that at all. We must have, so if we say we've got the numbers 5 and 10, so num2 is not less than number 5, so 10 is greater than that, that's not true, then the first number we read in must be the smallest number, because we've identified that the second number is bigger than the first number, so it must be in ascending order. Okay, so the first number we read, and we don't need to read any further, there's no point, but we have to read at least 2 numbers to confirm which order the file is stored in. Okay, so let's have a look at how we might do this in Python. Again, we have to specify the read mode using the open function and what file we want to open. Right, so we read 2 numbers in. Have to use the int function to convert those to numbers. And we've got here if num1 is greater than num2, then we've decided, so it's number 1, so let's say number 1 is 10, number 2 is 5, then if that is greater than that, then they're in descending order. Use the same structure that we've had several times, a repeat until, to read in, breaking out when we've reached the end. Okay, keep reading that into num1 here, converting it into a number each time using the int function, and then when we've got to the end of the file we'll have the correct value. Now if that's not true, so if the first number is less than the second number, okay, so if we say, well, the first number was 10 but the second number was 20, then we've got an ascending order file, and again we do not need to read any further, so we can just stop, close the file and have done with it. What you'll notice is that this doesn't read logically the same as the other one. Okay, so in this one I've used a less than, this one I've used a greater than, but what I've done is I've switched round the 2 variable names. Okay, so the decision is still the same decision, it's just that I've put num1 first in the Python and num2 second. So that's a good example of how you can alter logic if you want the meaning to be a certain way. Okay, so as long as the logic carries out a logical process, then it's okay. Alright, but you can see again, because we're having to mess about in Python with data types and things, that it all looks a little bit more complicated. but it's the same basic structure. So we got open a file, read something in, we've got the loop that does the test and the read, and then we've got at the end closing the file and outputting the answer. Okay.